Hi everybody, Vanquished Angel here, and today I have an interesting topic. Now, the actual purpose of this video is to kind of practice my editing a little bit, but I did research a topic that I did find very interesting. Now, if you've watched my other videos, you've noticed that I have a video out there that talks about pronouns and how I'm going to address you how you present yourself to me. And I don't necessarily believe in, 300 and some different genders I think they're up to now. I haven't checked lately. I don't know. Not scientifically, but according to Tumblr. Excuse me. And then they have a bunch of others. So I decided to research a lot of this as the topic for this video, and I also decided that maybe it is my opportunity to learn a little bit of something that maybe I wasn't open-minded to. I do tend to like to do this because sometimes it does open my mind, and I was not let down. I will link you to my research down below, just a few places that I got, but I knew some of this beforehand. I just didn't really a whole lot go into it, and of course I'm a gay male commenting on this issue. So what this video is going to be about, sorry if that took so long, is yeah, again, all these transgender issues and sexes. Now, what commonly comes up in a lot of forums that I'm on is mixing up of gender and sex. Now, to me, it doesn't really seem like a big deal, but actually, once I got more into it, the scientific part of it, it actually got a lot bigger. And so this is going to take me a little bit, but so bear with me. But so what I did was I looked up someone's paperwork on this. I don't really have his name right in front of me, but the link will be in the description. Started to look up karyotypes. Now, what karyotypes are, they're cells, essentially, with chromosomes and stuff like that. And in this case, this has to do with the sexual ones. Now, everybody knows the standard male and female sexual genes and chromosomes or whatever. So like the common female is 2X chromosomes. I am looking down at my notes once in a while because it's a lot to remember. The common male is an X and Y chromosome. And to everybody, most people out there, this would be known as the sex of the person. So if you have a penis, essentially, your sex is male. And if you have a vagina, your sex is female. Now, a common point of contention between conservatives and some liberals is that there's only two genders. Well, the problem is that people kind of confuse gender with sex. And I'll get more into that. I was kind of typically a little bit more in that camp up until I did this research. So this paper that I found, again, which will be linked to in the description, actually argued that there are more than just two sexes. And I was like, whatever, you either have a penis or you have a vagina. It's in the genes, right? Well, it turns out that's not 100% true. There are up to 6 viable combinations of genes that exist in humans. Now, what that means by viable means that they survive. They go through puberty and they grow up. Or they're able to grow up. They're able to live. They're viable. So the fetus is viable. And actually, so that kind of throws that whole using the karyotype as a distinction of sex, because it can have a penis but actually have the genetics for a girl. That's actually biologically possible. So, and I will link to some of these, and I'll have to click and stuff over a little bit, so bear with me if I don't quite get the editing right. But like the first one is Turner syndrome. Now that is just an X chromosome. And so we're going to kind of cover a lot of topics here. So now Turner syndrome is a chromosomal condition that affects the development in females. The most common feature of Turner syndrome is short stature, which becomes evident by about age 5. An early loss of ovarian function, ovarian hypofunction, or premature ovarian failure is also very common. The ovaries develop normally at first, but the egg cells, the oocytes, usually die prematurely, and most ovarian tissue degenerates before birth. Many affected girls do not undergo puberty unless they receive hormone therapy, and most are unable to conceive, so they are infertile. A small percentage of females with Turner syndrome retain normal ovarian function through young adulthood. About 30% of females with Turner syndrome have extra folds of skin on the neck, a webbed neck, a low hairline at the back of the neck, puffiness or swelling, lymphedema, of the hands and feet, skeletal abnormalities, or kidney problems. 1/3 to 1/2 of individuals with Turner syndrome are born with a heart defect, such as narrowing of the large artery leaving the heart, or abnormalities of the heart valve that connects the aorta with the heart, the aortic valve. And complications associated with these heart defects can be life-threatening. Most girls and women with Turner syndrome have normal intelligence, develop normal delays, nonverbal learning disabilities, and behavioral problems are possible, although these characteristics vary among affected individuals. So that is kind of just one way that the chromosome and the sex of the person are different than what normal people perceive. So then we have the XXY chromosome for sex. This is 1 to 500 according to this paper, to 1 to 1,000, and this is Klinefelter syndrome. And so we're going to go over what that is here. Klinefelter syndrome is a chromosomal condition that affects male physical and cognitive development. Its signs and symptoms vary among affected individuals. Affected individuals typically have small testes that do not produce as much testosterone as usual. The testosterone is the hormone that directs male sexual development before birth and during puberty. A shortage of testosterone can lead to delayed or incomplete puberty, breast enlargement, gynecomastia, reduced facial and body hair, and an inability to have biological children, infertility. Some affected individuals also have genital difference, including undescended testes, the opening of the urethra on the other side of the penis, or an unusually small penis. Older children and adults with Klinefelter syndrome tend to be taller than their peers compared with unaffected men. Adults with Klinefelter syndrome have an increased risk of developing breast cancer and a chronic inflammatory disease called systemic lupus erythematosus. Their chances of developing these disorders is similar to that of women in the general population. Children with Klinefelter syndrome may have learning disabilities and delayed speech and language development. They tend to be quiet, sensitive, and unassertive, but personality characteristics vary among affected individuals. So then we have another difference, which is the XYY chromosome, which affects about 1 to 1,000 people, and then we have the XXXY, which affects 1 to 18,000 to 1 to 50,000. So as you can tell, and then there's your normal ones. So as you can tell, determining the sex of someone by karyotype is not straightforward. Some will have female characteristics. So is it that far-fetched to assume that even someone with a penis with one of these could actually feel female and need that correction? It is actually quite logical that they could feel that way. This does have basis in biology. So a common argument against a lot of these things is that, well, you're still biologically male or you're still biologically female. Well, biologically, that might not even be the case due to this. So these are the 6 viable biological sexes in humans that survive. Other species may have different ones or varying amounts depending. So with that said, then there's gender. So what exactly is gender? Well, gender what is typically touted as being mostly a social construct for cultural behaviors. That is kind of true. But gender is based on your physical sex characteristics. So if you're born with a penis, society expects you to act masculine. This means, be rough, thump your chest, act hard, whatever. Put on a show, essentially. Thump your chest like the great apes, essentially, just the human version of it. And women, same thing. In society, just to be extreme, I don't actually believe these, but just to be extreme, society for the most part expects women to be barefoot, pregnant in the fridge or in the kitchen making a sandwich, barefoot, because that's your cultural behavior. Wear frilly dresses and pink and be weak and helpless. Those would be examples of gender roles that are assigned to you based on your physical sex characteristics. Now, the argument comes to that the extreme leftist would argue that gender is a social construct. Well, it sort of is. It's based on your physical sex, but it does have. So therefore, your gender is not quite your physical sex. However, your physical sex is just your physical sex, and then there's your biological sex. So your physical sex is just is essentially what is absorbed by other people. You're born into this world, the doctor looks at you, you have a penis, that's your physical sex. And that's what you get assigned. So, and then there's other issues to throw into the mix here. There's such a thing as a chimera that actually happens in society and within the population. What a chimera is, the technical definition, is two different organisms, mostly, they almost have to be of the same species, but two different organisms live as one life. Now you can see this in the plant world pretty easy when you buy those 5 apple trees. It's usually grafted from one tree onto the other tree, and it kind of lives almost as one organism but produces 5 apples. However, this does happen in animals, and it is actually discovered in modern science due to DNA testing. So what exactly can happen is, there might be a twin inside the womb, or multiple eggs fertilized, or what have you, or multiple sperm fertilizing the egg, or they grow separate and then grow together inside the womb. This actually happens. There's documented cases of this. You can look it up. So how this gets discovered in DNA is that, let's say a mother has a child and that child needs an organ. That child might reject the mother's organ, even though it's the mother, because they're actually not related. That is actually possible. So certain parts of the human body can actually be from this twin or this other fetus or pre-fetus that was developing inside the mother's womb that just joined and grew off of it, similar to a grafted tree. And so, yeah, that gets kind of creepy there, but it does happen. So a mother or a father can have a child biologically pregnant, came out, born into the world the old-fashioned way, and that father's body not actually related to the baby, because he might be a chimera. His reproductive organs are from that other organism that joined with him. And the same thing with the mother. So how does that factor into it? Well, what if the reproductive organs of that male father are male, but the father's body can actually be biologically female? That is actually possible. So there's a lot more into this mix than even just those 6 sexes when it comes to those other things, like a chimera. Now, even more to add into this, there's other cases. So there's the case of this one named Riley Grant. Now, Riley Grant has the XY chromosome. Riley Grant has a male's body. However, thanks to neuroscience today, we can map the male brain and the female brain. And we know that male brains and female brains are significantly different in many ways. This can be mapped. In the case of Riley Grant, his parents started to catch on when he tried to take scissors as shears to his penis. and they caught him. And he said, but this doesn't belong there. I'm a girl. And started living the life of a girl, wanted to. Now, the parents didn't necessarily foster this, but started living the life of a girl. MRI scans prove that Riley was correct. The brain of Riley Grant is mapped identical to the brains of women through research. Riley Grant's brain, without a doubt, is a girl. Now, this is not to say that all transgender people are in this. Sometimes, a lot of times, transgender people have other issues going on and sort of use transgenderism as a coping mechanism. Or other places kind of push transgenderism, which sounds kind of weird, like the country of Iran. Very intolerant towards gays, throws gay people off the building, but it is actually acceptable to get a sex change there, which is odd. It's more acceptable. So, men that might be men, or women that might be women, feel women, have women brains or whatever, but are attracted to the same sex, might get a sex change because that's how their society teaches it. So that is another weird dynamic to add to this is Riley Grant, that the brain, the body, and the reproductive system can actually all be different in humans. So, and then there's another one. Now, this one is the most interesting to me because this is a societal pressure. David Raymer is how I think you say his name. David Raymer was a boy when born, and then his parents, being religious, put him to get a circumcision. Then what happened is the doctor botched the circumcision and cut his penis off. The doctor and the parents decide to bury this secret and raise David as a girl, in frilly dresses and makeup and long hair, and pumped hormones into him to make him a girl at an early enough age, and essentially made him a girl. The problem? He's not a girl. David is a boy, and grew up to discover this later in life, that his sex was actually changed because the doctor botched a circumcision. So, and this is actually not as uncommon as people believe. I grew to discover this later in life, but that David then came out again as a male and transferred to a male again later in life. So not only biologically male with that XY chromosome, but society's willingness to adapt. Because back then they believed, and this is key to the next one after this, back then they believed that people were a product of their environment. So because they changed him and pumped him full of chemicals into a girl, and if they raised him as a girl, it would be a proper, probably Christian girl. And this was acceptable. Now, the even much bigger problem with this is that that's on the assumption that how you're raised. So, leading into the next one is there's something called the phallometer or phallicometer. Now, this was satirical, invented in the 80s, but its roots and where it comes from and what it's poking fun of was actually very real. The phallometer or phallicometer is actually a measurement of clitoris length or penis length that was used, and doctors actually used this. Not the exact phallicometer, but went by this. So if the male penis was over an inch, then it was considered a boy. But if it was under an inch, surgery. If the clitoris was under a certain length, then it was considered a girl. If it was over, possibly in the realm of surgery to correct. And this was done, and done in secret, oftentimes not told to the parents, and in other countries and stuff, because they wanted them to fit that societal norm, and they were doing it for the life of the person. So they were knowingly correcting God, essentially. These were also religious people. but they didn't see it that way as correcting God. But essentially, that's kind of, if you believe in God, that's kind of what they were doing. They were changing the sex of the person into what fit their definition. So me saying that I really only believe in maybe 2 or 3 genders, this is possibly wrong. Now that I've done this research, there is scientific basis for other sexes. So what I'm going to define here is gender is the social construct combined with the physical. That is gender. So, and society's version of gender. I'm going to argue that the binary sexes are actually more than 2. So there is other possibilities according to my research. And that nothing is as laid out as it seems. So, I mean, just to read off this phallometer, because whatever. In the U.S. today, infants are born with in the U.S. today, when infants are born with ambiguous genitalia, surgeons often operate in order to bring the child into accordance with our expectations for correct male or female genitalia, even when the actual morphology of their bodies causes no dysfunction or harm. Some activists, such as those involved with the Intersex Society of North America, are trying to stop these surgeries. The phallometer, found here, is a satirical ruler designed to draw attention to the way in which the surgeries force bodies existing in nature into social categories of our own invention. So this is kind of what that phallometer here is about. So hopefully this maybe enlightens some people. It was definitely some enlightening research for me. I do look at things just a little bit differently now than I did before. I was kind of, okay, you have a penis, you present yourself as a male, you're a male. You have a vagina, you present yourself as a female, you're a female. I'm still kind of in that camp. I'm going to address you how you present yourself to me. But I'm a little bit more enlightened on the subject now. So anyway, okay, thanks for watching. This helped my understanding a little bit more. Hopefully it helped your understanding a little bit more as well. Have a good day. Thumbs up if you liked the video or if you learned something or whatever. And have a good day.